Hi, and welcome to the Dark Knight Conspiracies. Episode 2, NESARA GESARA, Fake or Fiction. Before we get into that, I'd like to talk about not only this year's election, but past elections. I want to go back to 2004, and I remember watching Obama speak during the 2004 DNC convention. And I remember it was a very powerful speech, and when it was over with, I remember calling my friend and saying, "We just saw the next president of the United States for 2008." And lo and behold, Obama got elected. Now, Obama claims he had a scandal free 8 years. Well, let's go over some of the things that occurred during the Obama Biden administration. Does everybody remember Beergate with the black professor being harassed by white police officers for breaking into his own home because he forgot his keys? Well, Obama thought it was so serious that he had to have the guy at the White House for a beer to discuss race relations in this country. Soon after, we saw an 18-year-old black man in Ferguson shot by a police officer while defending himself from the individual trying to grab his gun. And we soon saw afterwards riots and fires break out. Well, Obama sent in the DOJ and Eric Holder to investigate, and lo and behold, they found nothing wrong with what the police officer did. But his life was ruined after that event. Soon after, we saw a black individual arrested in Baltimore, and while being placed into a EMS, somehow he fractured his spine in his neck to his backbone and later died. Those 6 officers went to trial and were found innocent. Soon after, the riots started again. Businesses burned, places were looted, and the Baltimore mayor said, "Let it go. These people need to get it out of their system," while the town burned. Next, we saw the individual in New York put in a headlock for illegally selling cigarettes. Now, this was the first "I can't breathe" situation. And that man died. So, what we are seeing, Obama put into motion during his administration the villainizing of our police force. And quite frankly, the start of defunding the police. Because that has soon transpired into this day and age. Soon after, we saw all the Benghazi hearings where nothing happened. We saw Obama claim ISIS was JV, nothing to worry about. Well, we know how that played out. Then we saw the tragedy in Haiti. We all know what went on there. So let's fast forward to the 2016 election. Now, I will admit, this was the first election I ever voted for a president of the United States, because this time I felt it was important. Previously, I always thought it didn't matter. You you were still getting the same person, whether Republican or Democrat. They're both the same wings on one bird. So I started to look at Hillary and we all knew what we were going to get with Hillary. Then Trump came down that escalator and joined the race. And I always thought he didn't have a chance. He wasn't a politician. He was an outsider. 16 other Republicans going up against him. I always thought it was going to be Jeb Bush and Hillary. But Hillary would ultimately win. Then one by one, we witnessed Donald Trump knocking off these candidates one by one. And soon we started to see a movement. Now, when I looked at Hillary, I went to the Bible. And after reading Revelations, I looked at it and said to myself, I could not see Hillary winning in a scenario where an antichrist would come into power and there'd be peace for 3.5 years. I just didn't see it happening, at least maybe not in this country, not for us. Then Donald Trump won against the most impossible odds, and they were furious. And remember, she wasn't supposed to lose. So about 10 months into Trump's presidency, well, we saw a lot of bad stuff. We started to see investigations, started to see many just attack after attack after attack on Donald Trump. So on October 28th of 2017, the CUE movement was born. And I'm referring to the 17th letter of the alphabet. Now, I came onto this movement rather quickly. I believe it was around November 4th where I discovered this. And I thought it was fascinating. Watching this play out, was it a LARP? Was it true? From my perspective, it was fascinating watching these drops and giving us information to go research for ourselves. And the information this CUE was giving us was all open source knowledge that you could find on the internet. So as time went on, the movement grew. And here we are 4 years later, and we can see what this movement has grown to. Now, as I was going through this process, I came to several conclusions. One was, if it wasn't for the CUE movement, I believe there would have been a civil war long ago where people would have been in the streets, both sides fighting against each other because of what they were doing to our duly elected President of the United States. But what the Q movement was teaching people was patience and peace through strength. The Patriots and the Anons chose to do our fighting over social media and the internet. We didn't need to take to the streets because that's what they wanted us to do. and it miserably failed. The other thing early on, I began to discern, I questioned the motives of these posts. And I began to question whether CUE was a good or bad thing spiritually. I looked at it from both perspectives, and I thought, what better way for the Antichrist to come into power and save the world than to put all these politicians up on pedestals in power only to take them down and then come out and claim, look at what I did. So I started to think that the CUE board was a tool of the Antichrist. But as time went on, we started to see more Bible references, Bible quotes, Bible pictures, spiritual music, and many quotes about arming ourselves with the armor of God. So the quickest conclusion I could come to was if this was an Antichrist board used to deceive people, I don't think he would have given us the tools needed to defend ourselves against him. So I do believe that the CUE board and movement is a good one. Another thing I noticed as time passed on, predictions known as proofs started to arise. What's fascinating about these proofs is I'll just take a random date. You can go find these proofs all over the internet. There'd be, say, a post on 9/11/2018 about a certain event or circumstances. And then if you look at the news cycle of what happened, say 9/11/2020, that post came true. And there are hundreds of these. And many people have posted many YouTube videos on this subject. The other thing we began to notice was like a movie, or I should say a Quentin Tarantino movie. It seems the beginning of the post were actually the end, and the end is actually the beginning. Now, we've often heard the words future proofs past. And as I look at this, these things are so precise and so timed, and the deltas between president posts and CUE posts are undeniable. My first conclusion was these are so intricate that nobody could have put this board together without having knowledge of the future. And that leads down another rabbit hole if you wish. And the other conclusion I came to was that we're watching a movie, meaning that everything has been scripted these last almost 4 years. That raises more questions for me. So, all in all, I think it's interesting and fascinating But now I want to turn to numerous financial experts are out there constantly talking about a financial reset and how this country cannot continue on its current path. I'm hearing things of a quantum financial system that was recently activated and is running simultaneously with the fiat system that we currently have. Some have said we defaulted on our debt on February 16th, and that led to the pandemic that we are now in. Whether or not this was an action of anger from a certain country towards us, or we were complicit, one way or the other, we shut our economy down and we shut our borders. And basically, the dollar is worth nothing right now. So long as we spend it in this country, we can print as much of it as we want. We just can't spend it anywhere else. Now, this dual financial system running reminds me of Kissinger and Nixon back in the 70s taking us off the gold standard and running the petrodollar system simultaneously with taking us off the gold standard. Now, what did we see when they pulled the plug on the gold standard? Well, we saw high unemployment, we saw inflation, we saw a gas shortage. People could only get gas on odd or even days depending on their license plates. So if this is true then, it's true now. So there will be some hardship when they pull the plug on the fiat system. Question is, how long and how bad will it be? I think Trump has put us in a good position with the trade deals and everything he's been doing with bringing jobs back, manufacturing back. So that leads into NESARA and GESARA. And you can find these videos all over the internet. And I'm here to just put my opinion out there. It could be true, it might not be true. But I'm just going to state what I believe in my own personal opinion, because I do believe some people that are promoting this, I've listened to their videos, and I do think they have good intentions. However, when you look at what's involved with this, one thing is a debt jubilee, where all debt would be forgiven. Another is everybody will be giving the wealth that was stolen from them since birth. As some have said, our birth certificates have been traded on Wall Street since the day we were born. Now, a debt jubilee, I could see, because according to this system, there would be no credit cards, no more credit, no more bank loans. Property values would come down so low that you would be able to afford to buy a house, and if you couldn't, other good people around the world would help you out. Now, I have no doubt that there are good people in this world. We've seen it. We've seen it in this country. We've seen hurricanes and disasters and personal tragedies throughout the world. And the U.S. has always come to the rescue and have donated to help countries and our own states out in times of need. So I can see a debt jubilee, one-time deal. What I can't see is everybody becoming a millionaire overnight. We saw this experiment play out during the pandemic. We saw people getting unemployment plus $600 a week. Now, during this pandemic, there were businesses, hospitals, etc., that were deemed essential that stayed open during this whole time. But yet, employees actually had the right to choose not to go to work because they were afraid of getting the virus. Well, when things started to clear up in certain states, businesses started trying to call their people back, and they wouldn't come back. And they used the pandemic, the virus, as their reasoning for not coming back. They were making more money on unemployment than they were at their regular jobs. So here's my question. How is manufacturing, how is the economy going to thrive if everybody's an instant millionaire? These people aren't going to want to go back to work. Who's going to work in our farms? Who's going to work in our food industry, our meatpacking plants? Who's going to work in transportation, transporting these goods? I mean, we saw this with the unemployment insurance. People are not going to work. So this is where I can't buy into that part. So do your own research is my advice. Some people think it's a good thing. Some people don't believe in it. I choose not to believe in it. We've seen people in chat rooms saying their student loan debt was forgiven, their credit card bills have a zero balance. Well, then put the proof out there. Show us a before and after statement of what it looked like. I mean, if you're going to make a claim like that, you're going to have to put the evidence. I, I'm not going to take a stranger's word for it. Even if it's somebody I know, I'm going to ask, show me. Show me your statements. Then maybe I would start buying into it. But right now, I I would say do your own research and think logically about these things. So I responded to one of these videos talking about Trump's executive order on deferring taxes, effective September 1st. Well, come to find out, most businesses chose not to opt into this. And I was told in a reply, let it go and trust the plan. So my response was, that's fine and dandy. The problem is that's not what we were told, or that's not how it was explained to us. We were told we were going to get extra money in our pockets till January 1st. However, 3 days before September 1st, the IRS put out their guidelines, and it gave companies a choice to opt out. So why were companies opting out? Well, it's obvious. pardon me, companies opted out because they were going to have to foot the bill for paying these taxes January 2021 through April 2021. Some people probably wouldn't be working at these companies, but the companies would have had to go back and were responsible for collecting these taxes. So I can understand companies opting out. The problem is that's not how it was explained to us. And that needs to be addressed, in my opinion, because some people I know are very upset over this. And I'm not sure how they're going to vote, but it may or may not impact their vote. So then I said, well, trust the plan. Well, unless you follow the CUE movement, and I will put a link in my description so you can research these for yourself. What is the plan? Because it's very confusing. We've been promised arrests, certain events that haven't transpired yet. So the only plan I trust is Jesus's plan and God's plan, because the Bible is the only definitive plan that is fully laid out as to how things end. And I also caution people on getting a false sense of security with all this stuff. Look, I have no doubt Trump will be elected or reelected. My problem is it took Trump to make us wake up and realize how we sat back the last 40 years and watched assassinations, let abortion happen, let the Patriot Act happen, let our rights slowly be taken away over the course of time, and we sat back and let it happen. Our school systems have just totally been overrun by what they're teaching our kids. And we sat back and we let it happen. My fear is Trump gets reelected and everybody's going to go back to the way it was and figure, I'm not going to have to worry about it till 2024. Well, I don't think that's the right approach to take to this. Question everything. You know, you're not a Trump hater if you question a certain policy or something that was said. I just think it's a good practice. Discernment is a good practice to be in. We cannot allow it to be caught off guard again. And in closing, I want to talk about all these peaceful protests that are going on and these peaceful fires that are going on and these peaceful assassinations of our police officers that are going on. But let's face it, they are peaceful. This is the most important vote and decision we're ever going to have to make in our lives. As people, we make hundreds of decisions every day. What to put on, what to eat. Do I want to go shopping? Do I want to cut the lawn? We do this every single day in our life. But I truly believe, and I'll quote Joe Biden during the DNC convention, which was very dark, very gloomy. I think they laid out their plan of what's in store for us. And he said, this election is the battle for the souls of this nation. I do believe he was speaking truth there, because that is what's at stake. Trump and Biden are fighting for the souls of this nation. And the Bible tells us there comes a time when we must choose between God and Satan. Some would point to taking the mark of the beast, but what if it's not? What if that's later on down the road? I do believe this election we are choosing God versus Satan. And the Bible tells us there comes a time when God turns his back after this decision and will not hear the prayers of the people that choose the other. I'm not here to tell anybody how to vote. You vote with your conscience and you vote with your mind. But I do believe you are voting good versus evil in this election. So in closing, I just want to show a short video. So there you have it. President Obama telling us we need a national security civilian force, just as strong and just as powerful. Can you say Antifa? Can you say Black Lives Matter? I do believe MS-13 was supposed to be a part of this movement. Thank God the DOJ and Jeff Sessions got most of these people off the streets. Can you imagine these people going through these protests with their machetes? I don't even want to think about it. So that's my closing statement. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. And tune in next time. Same bat time, same bat channel. Good night.